There's someone in your life, maybe a close friend, maybe a family member, maybe even you, who is completely present on social media. They comment, they share, they engage, but you will almost never see their face. No profile picture, no selfies, no birthday photos, just an absence where their image should be. And here's what's interesting about that. Most people assume this means something negative, that these people are shy or insecure or hiding something. But when psychology actually examines this behavior, what it finds is far more nuanced and, honestly, far more fascinating than simple shyness. Today, we're going to explore the real psychological patterns behind people who don't post their photos on social media. And some of what you're about to hear might make you rethink what you thought you knew about identity, privacy, and how the modern brain actually processes the idea of being seen. Let's start with something researchers have noticed consistently. When people are asked why they don't post photos of themselves online, the most common answers fall into a few distinct categories. Some say they value privacy. Others say they simply don't feel the need for external validation. And a significant number say something that sounds almost philosophical. They feel that their real life exists offline, and putting it online somehow diminishes it. That last response is psychologically significant because what those people are describing, without using the technical term, is something cognitive psychologists call identity context separation. The idea that who you are in real, lived experience is a different thing from who you appear to be in curated digital spaces. And for certain personality types, mixing those two feels deeply uncomfortable, almost like a violation of something private and personal. Research in digital psychology suggests that people with higher levels of what's called private self-consciousness, meaning they spend more time reflecting on their internal states, values, and identity, are significantly less likely to engage in self-presentation behaviors online. For these individuals, posting a photo isn't a neutral act. It's an exposure of something they consider deeply personal. Now, here's where it gets even more interesting. There's a branch of psychology called self-determination theory, and one of its core ideas is that humans have a fundamental need for autonomy, the feeling that your choices and your sense of self belong to you. For people who don't post photos, this need for autonomy often manifests as a strong resistance to what psychologists call the social gaze. That feeling of being observed, evaluated, and potentially judged by an undefined audience. And the brain, interestingly, does not distinguish well between imagined observation and real observation. Neuroscience research has shown that merely anticipating social evaluation activates the same regions of the brain, particularly the amygdala and the medial prefrontal cortex, that respond to actual social threat. So, for someone who is sensitive to that feeling, just imagining their photo being seen and assessed by hundreds of people can trigger a low-level but persistent stress response. Avoiding that experience isn't weakness. It's actually the brain doing exactly what it's designed to do: protect you from perceived threat. But there's another layer here that doesn't get talked about enough. Some people don't post their photos not because of anxiety, but because of something almost opposite: a strong, quiet sense of self that simply doesn't require external confirmation. Psychologists refer to this as a stable internal locus of identity. It means your sense of who you are doesn't depend on how others respond to you. And research consistently shows that people with this psychological profile tend to have lower social media engagement overall, not because they're disconnected from the world, but because they're deeply connected to themselves. Think about that for a moment. In a culture that has almost completely normalized the idea that sharing your life publicly is just what people do, choosing not to participate in that is actually a quiet act of psychological self-awareness. There's also a fascinating generational pattern worth noting. Studies have observed that certain individuals, particularly those who grew up before the era of constant digital documentation, have a fundamentally different relationship with personal imagery. For them, a photograph is a private object, something shared with specific people in specific moments. The idea of broadcasting that image to an open, anonymous audience feels genuinely strange, even invasive. This isn't technophobia, it's a different psychological framework for what photographs mean and who they belong to. And even among younger generations, a growing number of people are consciously opting out of photo sharing as a form of digital boundary setting, a deliberate choice to maintain some separation between their private self and their public digital footprint. So what does all of this tell us? It tells us that the decision not to post your photo on social media is rarely one-dimensional. For some people, it's driven by privacy instincts instincts and a sensitivity to social evaluation. For others, it reflects a secure, self-contained identity that doesn't seek validation through visibility. And for others still, it's a conscious, thoughtful boundary, a way of protecting something they consider genuinely valuable. None of these are pathological. None of them are something that needs to be fixed. They are simply different psychological relationships with the concept of being seen. And perhaps the most interesting takeaway is this. In a world that increasingly equates visibility with value, the people who choose to remain quietly invisible might just understand something profound about the difference between a life that is performed and a life that is actually lived.